What's up, everyone? I would say sports fans usually, and if you're a sports fan and you're watching this, that's cool because not everybody necessarily is going to be an American who watches this, but everyone everywhere is going to be subject to the politics that goes on where you stay. I just wanted to watch this because it's of interest to me. I wanted to just share my thoughts. I don't usually share my opinions in terms of my everyday life, usually because I have such strong opinions. It can turn into a debate that goes on for a while. I've learned a while ago to not let the emotions get the better of me. I transfer that over to my sports takes and opinions that I share. I feel, for the most part, whenever you do, when I say you, I mean anyone, whenever one does have a discussion where there is a hot debate on one or more different views that are usually opposing each other, for all that each individual believes in what they say, I can truly say that I have never, ever, ever seen anyone say, you know what, at the beginning of this conversation, I thought this, now I think that. I've never seen it happen. I'm not saying it hasn't, I just never seen it. About the only time you ever come close to that is if you're arguing over past history in terms of what happened. Did this team win? Did that team win? Did this issue get voted? Was it about this? Was this issue about that? Something that can be concretely decided by checking history to see what was recorded. And that's the only time I've ever seen anybody change their position. But in terms of a philosophy of this is how I think this should be done, this is how I think this team should go about, this is the player I think is better than that player, things like that, I've never seen anyone change their mind. So I'm thinking to myself, why am I going to be bothered to get worked up full of emotion when I can just state my case, try to be intellectual about it as possible. You want to at least I do. I want to speak from more than just I want this because I want this. This guy's better because I say this guy's better because it's I mean, if it has value to yourself, that's really much all it ever really needs to have. But if all it really never needs to have is just value to yourself, why do you even bother to share it with somebody else in the first place? I mean, are you trying to change that person's mind, or are you just trying to say what you think and you don't care if you change that person's mind? That's going to be probably different for each individual. But not getting off the track too far. Just this is the third segment I have of the congressional hearings with Michael Cohen, who is the former attorney for Donald Trump. This is becoming a recurring theme. I did break this down, as I stated earlier, broke this down into smaller segments so you can just watch a piece of it at a time. Share your thoughts in the comments. Definitely. I don't just because I don't think anyone's minds can be changed necessarily, at least not immediately. Maybe that's just a seed that's planted that over the course of time minds are changed. So that there is value on that level at the very least. But yeah, share your thoughts below. I don't know if I'll speak out one way or the other or not. I might just remain neutral. I do have my thoughts, trust me, I do. But I just wanted to present this series of clips to allow people to come together and express how they feel. See if we can actually remain close to civil, even if we disagree. I mean, a strong opinion is a strong opinion, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an attacking opinion. It may be attacking. Sometimes you can't help it. That's just the way opinions are going to be. When they're attacking, they're attacking. But try to at least be civil about it, understanding that it's okay for someone else to have a different opinion. I do think it's curious how the Republicans and Democrats are just so diametrically opposed in how they go about doing what it is they want to do to achieve what they wish to achieve. And it's as if you're looking at two different countries talking to each other instead of just one country with two different political philosophies talking. So I think about it. I don't know if that makes us better or worse, or at the end of the day, again, no change at all. It's just what people are, and it just goes forward, and it's just the wheel went round and stopped right here, to go round again to stop someplace else, and it'll all be the same. It's kind of hard not to be, I guess, not necessarily disenfranchised, but it's not kind of hard to get numb to it all and just become indifferent. You want to be engaged. You want to know, at least, like I said, I do. You want to have an idea of what's going on to you. I once heard a while ago that the personal is political. So in other words, I just like, if it doesn't affect me as a person, then it doesn't really affect me at all. I don't know how I feel. I think some things sooner or later are going to affect you more directly than others. But anyway, with that being said, I've spoken enough. Go ahead and watch this here. Share your thoughts on what you see, and maybe I'll share some thoughts without trying to lean one way too much or the other. And I probably will show all the parts before I have my final thoughts that I'll share at the end of this. But go ahead and watch this, and please feel free to share your thoughts at the bottom in the comments, and hit the like and subscribe buttons as well. Thank you. And also I want to give big thank you to MSNBC. It was the one channel I was trying to get as neutral of a channel as possible in terms of the kind of coverage and comments you might read. So I just wanted to try to find something that was a happy medium. I don't know if there is one out there, but this is what I found. So I want to thank MSNBC for the video feed that you're watching. And go ahead and I'll set up now, and you can go ahead and watch it.
Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cohen, it's on my heart to tell you, sir, that I'm sorry for what your family's going through. I feel for your family. The word tells us clearly that a man's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul. And I see you, a man trapped in that. However, I must tell you that I've arrested several thousand men, and you remind me of many of them. The ones that immediately become humble and remorseful at the time they're actually booked. And while they're incarcerated, they're quite penitent, and then return to their former selves when they're back on the street. So, respectful to your family and what they're going through, I owe you the honesty to tell you that that's my sense of you, good sir. I'm going to give you another opportunity to respond to what you brushed off earlier regarding your own statement during his testimony from C-SPAN notation at 2 hours and 50 seconds in. You stated regarding your credibility, that you're being accused of having no credibility, that it is exactly for that reason I spent the last week searching boxes to find the information that I did, so that you don't have to take my word for it. I want you to look at the documents and make your own decisions. Now, the documents you're referring to, Mr. Cohen, are the documents that you submitted with your testimony today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you believe those documents to be worthy of evidence for this oversight hearing today?
I leave that to you to decide.
And I ask you again, sir, and please don't be incredulous, this is a serious question. Where are those boxes that contain documents worthy of evidence to be presented to Congress, and why have they not been turned over to investigating authorities looking into some of the many criminal activities that you're allegedly cooperating in? Where are these boxes? Who knows where is this treasure of evidence?
The boxes that I'm referring to were boxes that were in my law office when the FBI entered and seized documents.
Mr. Chairman,
When
I
I
hope
was
that the
moving-
investigating authorities have noted what the gentleman had just stated, and that actions be taken for those boxes to be seized and reviewed based upon proper warrants signed by a sitting judge. You noted earlier today, Mr. Cohen, quite incredulously, one of my colleagues asked you regarding the television deal. You expressed wonderment that your predicament could possibly get you on television. It certainly got you on television today, has it not, sir?
So I was on television representing Mr. Trump going back into 2011.
Well, I didn't know who you were until today, really. Until the FBI raided your home. Most of Americans didn't know who you were. How many attorneys do you think Mr. Trump has had through the course of his career? Quite a few. I would imagine you're just one that's in a trap right now. And I understand you're trying to get out of it. You're in a bind. But I ask you, good sir, have you discussed film and book deals with your stated current attorney, Mr. Davis, Lanny Davis?
With Mr. Davis?
Yes.
No. But I have been approached by many people who are looking to do book deals, movie deals, and so on. So the answer
You're
to
right,
that
as
is
an
yes.
American, but it leads me back to my instinct that compares you to many of the men that I've arrested during the course of my career. Mr. Chairman,
With all due
sad
respect, sir,
that our primary hearing to introduce the Oversight Committee, the 116th Congress of the American people, has manifested in the way that it obviously is. This is an attempt to injure our president, to lay some sort of soft cornerstone for future impeachment proceedings. This is the full intent of the majority. I yield my remaining 30 seconds to the ranking member.
Mr. Cohen, earlier you said the United States Southern District of New York is not accurate in that statement.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Earlier you said that the United States Southern District of New York Attorney's Office, that statement is not accurate. You said it's not a lie, you said it's not accurate. You stand by that?
Yes, I did not want a role in the new administration.
So the court's wrong?
Sir, can I
Sure.
finish, please? I got exactly the role that I wanted. There is no shame in being personal attorney to the president. I got exactly what I wanted. I asked Mr. Trump for that job, and he gave it to me.
I'll let him ask it. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. You're saying that statement from the Southern District of New York attorneys is wrong.
I'm saying I didn't write it, and it's not accurate.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. One of the most significant events in the last presidential campaign, of course, was the dump of emails stolen from the Democratic National Committee, dumped by WikiLeaks. Mr. Cohen, during your opening statement, which was at the height of the election, you testified you were actually meeting with Donald Trump in July 2016 when Roger Stone happened to call and tell Mr. Trump that he had just spoken to Julian Assange. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And you said that Mr. Assange told Mr. Trump about an upcoming, quoting your opening statement, quote, massive dump of emails that would damage Hillary Clinton's campaign. So I want to ask you about Roger Stone's phone call to the president. First of all, was that on speakerphone? Is that what you indicated?
Yes, so Mr. Trump has a black speakerphone that sits on his desk. He uses it quite often because with all the number of phone calls he gets.
Now, in January of this year, 2019, the New York Times asked President Trump if he ever spoke to Roger Stone about these stolen emails, and President Trump answered, and I quote, "No, I didn't. I never did." Was that statement by President Trump true?
No, it's not accurate.
And can you please describe for us, to the best of your recollection, you were present, exactly what Mr. Stone said to Mr. Trump?
It was a short conversation, and he said, Mr. Trump, I just want to let you know that I just got off the phone with Julian Assange, and in a couple of days, there's going to be a massive dump of emails that's going to severely hurt the Clinton campaign.
And was Mr. Trump and Mr. Stone aware of where those emails came from?
That I'm not aware of.
Did Mr. Trump ever suggest then or later to call the FBI to report this breach?
He never expressed that to me.
Did the president at that time or ever since, in your knowledge, indicate an awareness that this conduct was wrong?
No.
The reason I ask is because on July 22nd, on the eve of the Democratic Convention, WikiLeaks published, as you know, the 20,000 leaked internal DNC emails. Could your meeting with Mr. Trump have been before that date?
Yes.
So Mr. Trump was aware of the upcoming dump before it actually happened,
Yes.
right? And is there any
No,
record?
sir, I don't know whether he knew or not, and I don't believe he did, what the sum and substance of the dump was going to be, only that there was going to be a dump of emails.
And he was aware of that before the dump occurred, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And are there any records that would corroborate the day of this meeting, calendars perhaps?
I'm not in possession, but I believe, again, this is part of the special counsel, and they
In,
probably best suited to corroborate that information.
was anyone else present in the room during the call?
I don't recall for this one, no, sir.
Is there anyone else the committee should talk to about the president's knowledge of the WikiLeaks email dump?
Well, again, when he called, Ronograph yelled out to Mr. Trump, "Rogers on line 1," which was regular practice.
And that's his assistant?
That's his, yes.
All right. And during a news conference on July 27th, 2016, then candidate Trump publicly appealed to Russia to hack Hillary Clinton's emails and make them public. He stated, and I quote, "Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing." Now, going back to Mr. Stone's phone call to the president, do you recall if Mr. Trump had knowledge of the WikiLeaks dump at the time of his direct appeal to Russia?
I am not.
But the call with Mr. Stone, you believe, was before
Yes.
this 27th?
Yes, I'm sorry. If you're, I thought you were talking about a different set of documents that got dumped. So I was in Mr. Trump's office, it was either July 18th or 19th. And yes, he went ahead. I don't know if the 35,000 or 30,000 emails was what he was referring to, but he certainly had knowledge.
All right, thank you. Just
Yes.
one last question. Mr. Raskin had been asking you some questions, and one of the things in your answer was that Mr. Pecker expended other monies to protect Mr. Trump. Can you elaborate on what some of those other activities were?
Sure. There was the story about Mr. Trump having a love child with an employee, with an employee, and actually the husband of that employee works for the company as well. And there was a elevator operator who claims that he overheard the conversation taking place between one of Mr. Trump's other executives and somebody, and he ended up paying like $15,000 in order to buy that story to find out whether it was true or not. And that's just one example of things that David had done over the years. It was the reason why in the recording, when David was looking to become the CEO of Time magazine, we were concerned about, we'll call it the treasure trove of documents that have been created over the years, that if he left, somebody could open up the key to a drawer and find all this information. So we were going to look to buy all of those life rights and so on.
Gentleman's time expired, Mr. Murray.
Mr. Cohen, thank you for testifying. I join Congressman Higgins in feeling for your family. They have no part in this. I've heard all the testimony, and I'm trying to decide what Clay's trying to decide. Are you really sorry for what you did, or you just got caught? And the thing that amazed me is that in your opening statement, which, let me quote, "Last fall, I pled guilty in federal court to felonies for the benefit of, at the direction of, and in coordination with individual one." Was that President?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your crimes were of your own to benefit yourself.
Some of that, yes.
No, go through all the ones with the real estate, with the banks. On your HELOC loan, you failed to disclose more than $20 million in debt. You failed to disclose $70,000 in monthly payments. On your $14 million line of credit, you failed to disclose that you had drawn on that. So this was all for yourself. This wasn't for the benefit of President Trump. This was to benefit Michael Cohen. So that's my question. Did you just get caught? And you worked for this man for 10 years, Mr. Cohen. You came in here with these. He's a con man. He's a cheat. This is the very man that didn't you wiretap him illegally? Did you not wiretap President Trump without his knowledge?
I did record Mr. Trump in a conversation, yes.
Is that lawyer-client privilege? Is that something that an honest guy would do? An honest lawyer?
I actually never thought that this was going to be happening and that recording even existed. I had forgotten.
But you did it.
Yes, I did.
Have you ever,
I had a reason for doing it
what was your reason?
because I knew he wasn't going to pay that money, and David Pecker had already chewed me out on multiple occasions regarding other monies that he expended.
But this is a man that you trusted, you take a bullet for, you secretly recorded. Let me ask you this, Mr. Cohen, have you legally or illegally recorded other clients?
I have recordings of people, yes.
Legally or illegally?
I believe that they're legal.
Did you tell?
In New York State, you don't have to do that.
So you didn't tell him?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Sometimes I also use the recordings for contemporaneous note-taking instead of writing it down. And I find it easier.
If the shoe were reversed, would you like your trusted lawyer recording you?
I probably would not know.
No, sir. It's untrustworthy. It's something people just would not do. Now, your bank loans that I just ran down, did you ever default on any of these loans?
No, sir.
So the bank didn't take any loss?
No bank has. I am not in default. I've never filed a bankruptcy. The HELOC you're referring to, I replaced that from a different HELOC. And paid it off. I owe no banks any money.
How about your medallion taxi cab today? Did you have to sell that?
Well, the ones in Chicago, yes, I do have to sell. However, in New York, the answer is no, I don't. And the industry is going through a major correction because of ride sharing. It's changed a lot of things.
The value of it has?
Yes, sir.
Right. So no bank, would the banks make you a loan again based on your record?
Actually, they did. They did. The bank actually redid and they refinanced the entire package.
Currently?
Post this, yes.
Okay, have they never had to do a loan loss reserve for the projected losses?
I don't know what they did, but it's still the same amount.
But
I didn't get the benefit of it, no, sir.
Most likely they did. I was on an audit committee.
They may have done that, sir, but that's for their own banking, and not for
No, it's by law.
my
They have to, if they suspect you of lying, which you admitted to, if they suspect you of maybe not being able to make a loan payment, they have to have a loan loss reserve that's 125% of what you. If it's $20 million, they have to post in their account $20 million plus. So they get no interest on it. And you know who pays for that? The American public who deals with that bank.
Yes, but sir, I'm not in default, and I'm current on each and every one of those medallion loans. And I've never owed any money to First Republic Bank. In fact, at the time that I had the HELOC, I had more cash sitting in that same bank
Okay, last question.
than the HELOC and my mortgage combined.
Have you ever been to Prague?
I've never been to Prague.
Never have.
I've never been to the Czech Republic.
You might bounce my time.
Ms. Fear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Cohn. On page 5 of your statement, you say, and I quote, "You need to know that Mr. Trump's personal lawyers reviewed and edited my statement to Congress about the timing of the Moscow Tower negotiations." Who were those attorneys?
Jay Sekulow from the White House.
Yes.
Jay Sekulow, I believe Abby Lowell as well.
And you have a copy of your original statement that you can provide to the committee?
I can try to get that for you.
All right, if you would do that. The letter of intent for the Moscow Tower was in the fall of 2015, correct?
Correct.
Was there an expiration date on that letter of intent?
There was no expiration.
So it could technically still be in effect today.
No, it's been terminated.
It has been terminated.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Mr. Trump tell you to offer Vladimir Putin a free penthouse?
No, ma'am.
So
That
what's
was Felix Sater. It was a marketing stunt that he spoke about.
So Felix Sater had suggested to you that Mr. Trump offer a penthouse to Mr. Putin?
Yes, because it would certainly drive up the price per square foot. No different than in any condo where they start listing celebrities that live in the property.
In 2016, did you travel to Europe?
Yes.
Did you meet with persons associated with the Moscow Tower project?
No.
It was for personal? Or?
Personal. My daughter was studying at Queen Mary in London.
So you did not meet with any Russians?
No.
There is an elevator tape that has been referenced as a catch and kill product. It was evidently of Mr. Trump and a woman, presumably Mrs. Trump, is that correct?
Are we talking about in Moscow or the Trump Tower elevator tape?
There's an elevator tape that went up for auction, ostensibly in 2016, is
Yes,
that
I've
correct?
heard about this.
And who is on that tape?
It's Mr. Trump with Melania.
And what happened in that tape?
But the story goes that he struck Melania while in that elevator because there's a camera inside, which I'm not so sure. Actually, I'm certain it's not true. I've heard about that tape for years. I've known 4 or 5 different people, including folks from AMI, who have.
So, but there was some tape that went up for auction, correct?
I don't believe that auction was real, and I don't believe Mr. Trump ever struck Mrs. Trump, ever. I don't believe it.
And are you aware of anyone purchasing that tape then?
I don't believe it was ever.
So you never saw this tape?
No, ma'am, and I know several people who went to go try to purchase it for catch and kill purpose. It doesn't exist.
Right.
Mr. Trump would never, in my opinion, that's not
Good to
something
know,
I
good to know. Is there a love child?
There is not, to the best of my
So
knowledge.
you would pay off someone to not
It wasn't me, ma'am.
report?
It was AMI. It was David Pecker.
So he paid off someone about a love child that doesn't exist?
Correct. It was about $15,000.
Okay. How many times did Mr. Trump ask you to threaten an individual or entity on his behalf?
Quite a few times.
50 times?
More.
100 times?
More.
200 times?
More.
500 times?
Probably. Over the 10 years.
Over the 10 years, he asked you,
And when you say threaten, I'm talking with litigation or an argument with
intimidation.
a nasty reporter that is writing an article.
What do you know about, let's go to your tapes. You said there's probably 100 tapes,
Voice recordings,
voice recordings. And will you make them available to the committee?
if you really like them.
Did Mr. Trump tape
Don't you have to gavel that, sir?
We would.
Sorry.
Mr. Trump, did Mr. Trump tape any conversations?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Were you involved in the $25 million settlement to Trump University?
I had a role in that, yes.
Who paid the settlement?
I believe it was Mr. Trump. I don't know the answer to that.
You don't know the answer, but you were involved in the...
Yes, in a different aspect.
There's some reference to a businessman in Kansas being involved in that. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
All right. Finally, near my 13 seconds left, what do you want your children to know?
That I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for the pain that I've caused them. And wish I can go back in time.
Thank you. I yield back.
Young lady's time is expiring. To the members of the committee, before we go to Ms. Miller, so that you can properly plan, there's a vote apparently coming up in about 10 to 20 minutes. And what we will do is we will recess and we will come back, listen up, 30 minutes after the last vote begins. Got that? Not it ends. 30 minutes after it begins, and we'll do that promptly. All right? All right, Ms. Miller.
I am very disappointed to have you in front of this committee today. Quite frankly, this isn't the reason the people of West Virginia sent me to Congress. I find this hearing not in the best interest of the American people. This is another political game with the sole purpose of discrediting the president. If it was not already obvious, there are members here with a singular goal in Congress: to impeach President Trump. To achieve this goal, they will waste not only precious taxpayer dollars, but also time in this committee and Congress as a whole. In fact, they will go so far as to bring a convicted felon in front of our committee. We are supposed to take what you say, Mr. Cohen, at this time about President Trump as the truth. But you're about to go to prison for lying. How can we believe anything you say? The answer is we can't. This begs the question, why are those in the majority holding this hearing? I am appalled. We could be focused on actual issues that are facing America, like border security, neonatal abstinence syndrome, or improving our nation's crumbling infrastructure. Instead, the Democrats are trying to grasp at straws. Let's talk about this witness. From his sentencing hearing in the Southern District of New York, Judge Pauley stated, Mr. Cohen pled guilty to a veritable smorgasbord of fraudulent conduct, willful tax evasion, making false statements to a financial institution, illegal campaign contributions, and making false statements to Congress. Each of the crimes involved deception, and each appears to have been motivated by personal greed and ambition. This is who we have in front of us today in our committee. Someone who is about to be sent to prison for 3 years for evading his taxes, deceiving a financial institution, lying to Congress, among other counts. One of the most appalling facts about this hearing is that Mr. Cohen has used his experiences with President Trump both before and after he was elected for his own greed and profit. I'd like some yes or no answers. Isn't it true you tried to sell a book about your time with President Trump entitled Trump Revolution, From the Tower to the White House, Understanding Donald J. Trump?
Yes, that happened early on when I was still even part, I believe, of the RNC.
And this book deal, which you had with Hatchet Books, was worth around $500,000. Isn't that correct?
No more, ma'am.
How much more?
I think it was about $750.
Wow. Mr. Cohen,
I did turn it down.
given that you continue to profit from publicly discussing your time with Mr. Trump, I worry that this committee hearing the majority has given you will only serve as a platform for you to continue to lie and sensationalize and exaggerate wherever it suits you. Do you plan to pursue another book deal about your experiences?
Yes.
I would presume this book would be a little different than your latest pitch, but your new angle might please some new fans. Anything to sell books. Mr. Chairman, we've canceled hearings on child separation and on other issues that are close to my heart for this media circus. What a waste of time and money. For a man who has gladly exploited the name of the president to promote his own name and fill his own pockets, it pains me that we are sitting here adding another chapter to his book. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Jordan.
Thank the gentlelady for yielding. Earlier, Mr. Cohen, the gentlelady from California talked about this this tape.
I'm sorry, sir, I can't hear you.
Earlier, the gentlelady from California talked about this tape, this elevator tape that you said does not exist.
That's correct. I do not believe it exists.
But is it also your testimony that the Trump team was willing to pay to make sure a story about a non-existent tape never became public?
No, sir, that's not what I said.
They were willing to stop a false tape?
We learned that this tape was potentially on the market and that it existed. And so what we did is exactly what we did with all the other catch and kill. We looked for it, and if in fact that it did exist, we would have tried to stop it. That's what I would have done.
False tape.
It's a false tape. I've never heard it, and I can assure you one thing about Mr. Trump. Many things, he would never ever do something like that. I don't see it.
Ms. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cohen, I'd like to ask you more about the details of the $130,000 payment you made to Stephanie Clifford, the adult film actress known as Stormy Daniels, in order to purchase her silence shortly before the 2016 elections. First, according to documents filed by federal prosecutors in New York, you created a shell company called Essential Consultants, LLC. Is that correct?
It's correct.
And you created this company for the purpose of making the payment to Ms. Clifford, is that correct?
Amongst other things, yes.
You then used a home equity line of credit to fund the account in the name of Essential Consultants, LLC, is that correct?
That's correct.
You then wired $130,000 to the attorney representing Ms. Clifford at that time and wrote in the memo field for the wire the word, quote, retainer, is that correct?
Correct.
Can you tell us why you decided to use this complicated process to make this payment?
Well, starting an LLC is not a sophisticated means. LLC, you call up a company, you pay for it, and they open it for you. And the reason that I used the home equity line of credit as opposed to cash that I had in the same exact bank was I didn't want my wife to know about it because she handles all of the banking. And I didn't want her coming to me and asking me what was the $130,000 for. And then I was going to be able to move money from one account to the other and to pay it off because I didn't want to have to explain to her what that payment was about. I sent it to the IOLA account, the interest on a lawyer's account, to Keith Davidson, California, Ms. Daniels' attorney. He would hold it in escrow until such time as I received the executed NDA, non-disclosure agreement.
Did Mr. Trump know you were going through this process to hide the payment?
Yes.
Why not just use Mr. Trump's personal or company bank account to make the payment? Why was the distraction so important besides you not wanting your wife to know?
What his concern was that there would be a check that has his very distinct signature onto it. And even after she cashed the check, all you need to do is make a photocopy of it, and it's kind of proof positive on exactly what took place. So here, the goal was to keep him far away from it as possible.
Can anyone corroborate what you have shared with us?
Absolutely.
And that is?
Keith Davidson, Alan Weisselberg, President Trump.
Okay. Now let's talk about the reimbursement. According to federal prosecutors, and I quote, after the election, Cohen sought reimbursement for election-related expenses, including the $130,000 payment. Prosecutors stated that you, and I quote, presented an executive of the company with a copy of a bank statement reflecting the $130,000 wire transfer. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Do you still have a copy of that bank statement?
Yes, it's actually made part of the exhibit.
Okay, so you will provide it to the committee?
Yes, ma'am.
According to federal prosecutors, executives at the company then, and I quote, agreed to reimburse Cohen by adding $130,000 and $50,000, grossing up that amount to $360,000 for tax purposes, and adding a $60,000 bonus, such that Cohen would be paid $420,000 in total. Executives of the company decided to pay the $420,000 in monthly installments of $35,000 over the course of a year. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
What was the purpose of grossing up the amounts, essentially doubling what you had paid to Miss Clifford and others?
Because if you pay $130,000, when you live in New York, we have a 50% tax bracket. In order to get your $130 back, you have to have $260. Otherwise, if he gave me back $130, I'd be out $65,000.
What was the purpose of spreading the reimbursements to you over the 12 monthly installments?
That was in order to hide what the payment was. I obviously wanted the money in one shot. I would have preferred it that way. But in order to be able to put it onto the books, Alan Weisselberg made the decision that it should be paid over the 12 months so that it would look like a retainer.
And did Mr. Trump know about this reimbursement method?
Oh, he knew about everything, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. So the president not only knew about the payments, he knew and helped to hide the payments and the reimbursements to you.
And we discussed it. Everything had to go through Mr. Trump, and it had to be approved by Mr. Trump.
And now you're going to prison, and
And I'm going to prison, yes, ma'am.
I yield back.